The billionaire sits frozen as two strangers approach the witness stand. "We're your brother and sister," the woman announces, holding DNA evidence. "Born the same day, same hospital, but you got the mansion while we got foster homes." The courtroom erupts. His father paid them to disappear, and now they're testifying against him. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from, and don't forget to click subscribe. Zara Mitchell was running late for her shift at the diner when she smelled the smoke. It wasn't the usual city smell of exhaust and street food. It was closer, sharper, wrong. She was 3 blocks from her apartment building when she saw the black plumes rising into the November sky like angry fists punching through the gray morning. Her heart dropped somewhere near her knees as she started running, her worn sneakers slapping against the wet pavement. "Please not my building. Please not my building," she whispered to herself like a prayer she knew wouldn't be answered. But when she turned the corner onto Riverside Avenue, her worst fear materialized in front of her. Her building, the rundown 6-story brick structure she'd called home for 3 years, was engulfed in flames. Fire trucks blocked the street, their lights painting everything in urgent reds and blues. Firefighters shouted orders while water arced through the air in desperate streams. Zara pushed through the crowd of neighbors and onlookers, her throat tight with smoke and panic. "That's my apartment," she shouted at a police officer trying to hold back the crowd. "4th floor, apartment 412. "Miss, you need to stay back," the officer said. But his eyes were kind, full of the practiced sympathy of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Everyone got out safely, but the building is a total loss. A total loss. The words hit her like physical blows. Everything she owned was in that apartment. Her grandmother's quilt, the only thing she had left from the woman who raised her. Her nursing school textbooks, each one representing a month of eating ramen and skipping nights out. The laptop she'd saved for 2 years to buy. The photos of her mother before the cancer took her. All of it. Gone. Zara stood there in the street, watching her life burn, feeling the heat on her face even from 50 feet away. She didn't cry. She'd learned a long time ago that crying didn't put out fires or pay bills or bring back what was lost. She just stood there, numb, while her neighbors wailed and cursed, and thanked God they were alive. Mrs. Chen from apartment 414 grabbed her arm. "Zara, baby, did you hear what they're saying? It wasn't an accident. Someone set this fire on purpose." Zara looked at her confused. "What do you mean someone set it?" Mrs. Chen's weathered face was tight with anger. "The fire investigator, he's already saying it's arson. Started on purpose, probably in one of the ground floor units. They're saying it might have been the landlord, trying to get us all out so he could sell to developers." But Zara wasn't listening anymore. She was watching a man on the other side of the police tape. He stood apart from the crowd, tall and still, wearing a coat that probably cost more than her annual rent. His face was handsome in that sharp, expensive way, all clean lines and cold confidence. But it wasn't his looks that caught her attention. It was the way he was watching the fire. Not with horror or sympathy, but with something that looked almost like satisfaction. Their eyes met across the chaos. For a moment, everything else faded. The sirens, the shouting, the roar of the flames. He didn't look away, didn't even blink. Just stared at her with those ice blue eyes like he was memorizing her face. Then he smiled. It was a small smile, barely there. But Zara saw it, and something cold slithered down her spine. "Who the hell are you?" she whispered. The man turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. 2 weeks later, Zara was living in a cramped studio she shared with her friend Deshawn, sleeping on an air mattress and wearing borrowed clothes. The Red Cross had given her $200 and a voucher for replacement items. Her insurance, the cheapest policy she could find, was fighting her on every claim. She'd missed a week of work at the diner and 2 of her nursing school classes. Her professor had been understanding but firm. "Miss Mitchell, if you miss one more clinical rotation, you'll have to repeat the entire semester." She was working a double shift at Rosie's diner, her feet aching and her back screaming, when the news broke on the television above the counter. And in local news, prominent developer Dominic Sterling has been arrested in connection with the Riverside Avenue apartment fire that displaced 63 families earlier this month. Prosecutors allege Sterling ordered the arson to force residents out of the building, which he planned to purchase and demolish for a luxury condominium development. Sterling, who is heir to the Sterling Properties fortune, has denied all charges and posted bail of $5 million. He faces up to 20 years in prison if convicted. Zara's hands went numb. The coffee pot she was holding slipped, shattering on the floor in an explosion of glass and hot liquid. The diner went silent. Every eye turned to the television screen where a photo of the man filled the frame. That face. Those ice-blue eyes. That cold, satisfied smile. That was him, Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. That's him. The man I saw at the fire. Deshawn, who was wiping down tables, rushed over. You saw him there? The day of the fire? Zara nodded, her heart pounding. He was watching it burn like he was enjoying it. And when he saw me looking at him, he smiled. The diner erupted in overlapping voices. You have to tell the police. You're a witness. This is huge. Girl, you could help put him away. But Zara was still staring at the screen. Dominic Sterling. The name tasted bitter in her mouth. She knew that name. Everyone in the city knew that name. The Sterling family owned half the buildings downtown. They were the kind of rich that made them untouchable. The kind that bought their way out of every problem with lawyers and connections, and money most people couldn't even imagine. And he'd burned down her home. The next morning, Zara called the prosecutor's office. She was transferred 3 times before finally reaching someone who would listen. Yes, Ms. Mitchell, we're very interested in your testimony, the assistant district attorney said. His name was Marcus Webb, and his voice had that particular exhaustion of someone fighting a battle he wasn't sure he could win. Mr. Sterling has an extensive legal team already trying to discredit our case. An eyewitness who can place him at the scene would be invaluable. What do I have to do? Testify at the trial. Tell the jury what you saw. Mr. Webb hesitated. I should warn you, though. The defense will come after you hard. They'll try to make you look unreliable. Maybe suggest you have ulterior motives. And Mr. Sterling's family has significant resources. Witnesses in cases like this sometimes face pressure to change their stories. Are you threatening me? No, ma'am. I'm preparing you. This won't be easy. Zara thought about her grandmother's quilt, about the photos of her mother, about all the other families who lost everything in that fire. Easy hasn't been on the menu for a long time, she said. I'll do it. The trial was set to begin in 6 weeks. In the meantime, Zara tried to rebuild her life from scratch. She picked up extra shifts at the diner, sold what little jewelry she had, and slowly started replacing the things she'd lost. Deshawn, who worked as a freelance graphic designer, cleared out his storage closet so she could have more space. You can stay as long as you need, he said. We'll figure it out. But Zara knew she couldn't stay forever. Deshawn's studio was barely big enough for 1 person, let alone 2. She needed her own place, but with her credit shot from missed bills after the fire, and first month, last month, and security deposit requirements, finding something affordable seemed impossible. She was walking home from her shift one evening when a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and there he was, Dominic Sterling, in the flesh, even more intimidating up close than he'd been across the street. Get in, he said. It wasn't a request. Are you insane? Zara kept walking, her heart racing. I'm the one testifying against you. You think I'm getting in your car? We need to talk, he said, the car rolling slowly alongside her. About what happened. I know what happened. You burned down my building. That's not entirely accurate, he said, and there was something in his voice. Not quite remorse, but close. Get in the car. Let me explain. Zara stopped walking and turned to face him. She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. You're not supposed to be anywhere near me. I'm not under a restraining order, he said calmly. Not yet. And you can call whoever you want, but I'm just offering you a conversation. 5 minutes. Then I'll leave you alone. Why would I believe anything you say? Because I have information about that fire that you need to hear. Information that might change your mind about testifying. Zara's finger hovered over the emergency call button. Everything in her screamed to run, to call for help, to get as far from this man as possible. but something in his eyes stopped her. Not kindness exactly, but something raw and almost desperate. 5 minutes, she said, not getting in the car. Right here, on the street where people can see us. Fair enough. Dominic turned off the engine and got out. Up close, he was even more imposing, over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and hands that looked like they'd never done manual labor in their life. He wore a suit that probably cost more than Zara had made all year. They stood on the sidewalk, the evening traffic rushing past, while Dominic Sterling, heir to a fortune built on luxury real estate, tried to explain why he'd allegedly destroyed a building full of poor families. "I didn't order that fire," he said. "I know that's what the prosecutors are saying, but it's not true." "Then why were you there watching it burn?" His jaw tightened. "Because I got a call that morning. Someone told me to come to that address, said there was something I needed to see. When I got there, the building was already on fire. From someone you're conveniently not naming." Dominic ran a hand through his dark hair. "It's complicated. Everything's complicated when you're rich," Zara shot back. "Must be nice to have complicated problems instead of real ones. You think losing everything you own isn't a real problem? Only when it's your everything, not a tax write-off." He flinched, and Zara felt a small savage satisfaction at landing the hit. "Look," he said, his voice dropping lower. "I'm not asking you to like me. I'm not even asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to consider that maybe the person who actually set that fire wants me to take the fall for it. And why would someone do that?" Dominic met her eyes. "Because I was stupid enough to make an enemy of someone more powerful and more ruthless than I could have imagined. And now 63 families are homeless." He nodded slowly. "Yes. And I'm trying to fix that." Zara laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fix it? You can't fix it. My grandmother's quilt is gone. The last photos I had of my mother are gone. 3 years of my life, just smoke and ashes. You think money fixes that?" "I think it's a start," he said quietly. "Let me help you. I don't want your guilt money. It's not guilt money, it's..." He paused, searching for words. "Call it restitution." Zara started walking again. "Your 5 minutes are up." "Wait," he said, falling into step beside her. "At least let me give you my number, in case you change your mind." "I won't." He pulled out a business card and pressed it into her hand before she could refuse. The heavy cardstock was embossed with gold lettering, his name and a phone number. Nothing else. "Please," he said. "Just think about it." Zara shoved the card in her pocket without looking at it and walked away. She felt his eyes on her back the entire block. That night she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Dominic had said, about someone more powerful setting him up. It sounded like exactly the kind of story a rich man would tell to avoid consequences, except something about the way he'd said it, the fear underneath the calm exterior, had seemed genuine. She pulled out his card. Just looking at it felt like a betrayal of everyone who'd lost their homes. But her fingers traced the embossed letters anyway, feeling the expensive paper, the kind of quality that announced money without saying a word. The next day at the diner, Zara's best friend Keisha, a paralegal who ate lunch there every Wednesday, slid into a booth with news. "Girl, you're not going to believe what I heard at the office today. About the Sterling case." Keisha leaned in, lowering her voice. "There's another player involved. Someone bigger than Dominic Sterling. The prosecutors think the fire was ordered by Victor Reeves." Zara frowned. "Who's Victor Reeves?" "Only the biggest commercial developer in the state," Keisha said. "He owns Reeves Development Group. They're the ones who were really trying to buy that building. Sterling Properties put in a competing bid. The theory is Reeves had the building burned to eliminate the residents and make Sterling look like the bad guy at the same time. 2 birds, 1 match. But why would Reeves risk it? He's already rich." Keisha shrugged. "Rich people always want more. Plus there's history there. Word is Dominic Sterling's father screwed over Victor Reeves in a deal 20 years ago. Cost Reeves millions. Some people have long memories." Zara felt something shift in her chest. Maybe Dominic had been telling the truth. Or maybe this was all just rich people playing games while poor people paid the price. That evening, she dug out Dominic's card and stared at it for a long time. Finally, she pulled out her phone and typed a text. This is Zara Mitchell. We need to talk. About Victor Reeves. The response came within seconds. Tomorrow. Noon. There's a cafe on 7th and Main. Corner table. He'd been waiting for her to contact him. Somehow that made everything more complicated. The next day, Zara arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. It was the kind of place that served $12 lattes and had furniture that looked uncomfortable but probably cost a fortune. She ordered regular coffee, black, and waited. Dominic showed up exactly at noon, and Zara realized he probably hadn't been early to anything in his life. Money bought you the privilege of making others wait. You came, he said, sliding into the seat across from her. Don't sound so surprised. I'm here for information, nothing else. Fair enough. He ordered an espresso from the hovering waiter without looking at the menu. Tell me what you know about Victor Reeves. Zara repeated what Keisha had told her, watching Dominic's face carefully. His expression barely changed, but she saw his hands tighten around the coffee cup. So it's true, she said. This is about some old grudge between him and your father. It's more than a grudge, Dominic said. Victor Reeves tried to destroy my father's business 30 years ago. When that didn't work, he went after our family personally. My mother was in a car accident that the police said was suspicious but could never prove. My younger sister had her college admission mysteriously revoked after a donation from an anonymous source. Reeves operates in the shadows, but everyone knows his fingerprints, and now he's framing you for arson. Dominic's blue eyes met hers. Yes. Because if I go to prison, Sterling, properties falls apart. My father's in poor health, can't run the company. My brother wants nothing to do with the family business. It all falls to me, and if I'm locked up, Reeves wins. He gets the company, the properties, everything my family built. Zara sat back. So you want me to not testify? I want you to tell the truth, he said. You saw me at the fire, but did you see me start it? Did you see me talk to anyone there? Did you see me do anything other than stand and watch? She hadn't. She'd only seen him observing and that satisfied look on his face. What were you smiling about? She asked. When you saw me looking at you, you smiled. What was that about? He looked away for the first time, something like shame crossing his features. I wasn't smiling about the fire. I was smiling because I just realized something. Reeves had outplayed me, and I couldn't even be angry about it. It was such a perfect trap that part of me had to admire it. That's sick. Maybe, he agreed. But that's the world I grew up in. Everything's a game. Everyone's a player. I forgot for a moment that real people get hurt. People like you. Zara wanted to stay angry, but something in his voice, the weariness, the self-awareness, made it harder. You really didn't know there were families in that building? I knew it was residential, he said quietly. I didn't let myself think about what that meant. Faces, names, lives. It was just a property, just a deal. That's how I was raised to think. But seeing you there, seeing your face when you realized everything was gone. He stopped, swallowing hard. I can't unsee that. Good, Zara said. Maybe guilt will make you a better person. I hope so, he said. But first I need to prove I didn't do this. And I need your help. What kind of help? Dominic pulled out a folder from his bag. Inside were bank statements, phone records, and other documents Zara couldn't begin to understand. This is everything I have on Reeves and his connection to the fire. The DA's office won't look at it because they're convinced they have their man. But if you testify that you saw Reeves's people at the scene, that changes everything. I didn't see Reeves's people, she said. I saw you. But you didn't see me start the fire. You didn't see me talking to anyone suspicious. What if I told you that the man standing next to me, the one you probably didn't even notice, was Peter Morrison, Reeves's head of security? Zara tried to remember. There had been other people in the crowd, but she'd been so focused on Dominic, on that strange, satisfied smile, that she hadn't paid attention to anyone else. I don't remember. Dominic pulled out a photo. This is Morrison. Tall guy, scar on his left cheek, always wears black. Zara's stomach dropped. She did remember. There had been a man matching that description, standing close to Dominic, saying something she couldn't hear. He'd left before Dominic, melting into the crowd. Why was he there? Dominic's voice went hard, because he wanted to make sure I saw what Reeves had done. Make sure I understood the message. This is what happens when you get in Victor Reeves's way. Zara's head spun. None of this made sense with the simple story the prosecutors had told. Rich developer burns building for profit. That story had clarity, justice. This story was complicated, messy, and didn't have a clear villain. Or maybe it did, just not the one she'd thought. I need to think, she said, standing up. This is too much. Dominic stood too. I understand. But Zara, please think carefully. If I go to prison for something I didn't do, Reeves wins, and he'll do this again. He'll burn more buildings, hurt more people, because he'll know he can get away with it. Zara walked out of the cafe with the folder under her arm and Dominic's words echoing in her head. She spent the next 3 days reading through every document, making notes, asking Keisha to explain the legal and financial parts she didn't understand. The picture that emerged was damning, but not in the way she'd expected. Dominic Sterling wasn't innocent. He'd spent years playing ruthless business games, destroying smaller companies, displacing communities for profit. But this fire, this particular crime, he might not have done. Victor Reeves, on the other hand, had a history of violence hidden behind shell companies and careful distance. Buildings that mysteriously caught fire. Business rivals who had sudden accidents. Witnesses who changed their stories or disappeared. He was everything Dominic claimed, and worse. 4 days before the trial, Zara got a phone call from a number she didn't recognize. Ms. Mitchell, a smooth voice said. My name is Victor Reeves. I think it's time we had a conversation. Every instinct told her to hang up. Instead, she said, I have nothing to say to you. You have everything to say to me, Reeves replied. You're the star witness in a case that could send an innocent man to prison. Innocent? She nearly laughed. Dominic Sterling is many things, but innocent isn't one of them. Perhaps, Reeves said, but he didn't burn down that building. And you know it. How would you know what I know? Because I've been watching you, Miss Mitchell. I know you met with Sterling 3 times in the past 2 weeks. I know he gave you documents. I know you're wavering. The certainty in his voice sent ice through her veins. So what do you want? I want you to testify exactly as you planned, Reeves said. Tell them you saw Sterling at the fire. Tell them he looked pleased about it. Tell them he's guilty. And if I don't? There was a pause, and when Reeves spoke again, his voice had dropped to something dangerous. Then I'll be very disappointed. And when I'm disappointed, Ms. Mitchell, unfortunate things tend to happen. People lose jobs. Apartments become unavailable. Friends have unexpected troubles. You're threatening me. I'm educating you, Reeves said, about how the world works. Men like Dominic Sterling think they're players, but they're really just pieces. You're a piece, too. The question is whether you're going to be a piece that survives, or one that gets swept off the board. The line went dead. Zara sat on Deshawn's couch, hands shaking, trying to process what had just happened. She'd thought Dominic was the villain, then maybe he wasn't, and now there was this voice on the phone, calm and cold, threatening her life like he was discussing the weather. She needed help, but who could she trust? The DA's office thought they had their case. Dominic had his own agenda. Reeves was clearly willing to destroy anyone in his way. She was alone. That night, she barely slept. Every car sound outside made her jump. Every creak of Deshawn's old building made her heart race. When her phone rang at 2 a.m, she almost didn't answer. But the caller ID said Dominic Sterling, and something made her pick up. Did Reeves call you? He asked without preamble. How did you know? Because he called me too, Dominic said. Told me to leave town, drop my defense, let the conviction happen. Said if I fought it, he'd make sure my father didn't live to see the new year. Jesus, Zara whispered. Dominic's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. This is who we're dealing with, Zara. This is the man who actually burned your building, who destroyed 63 families' homes, who's threatening both of us. And if we don't stop him, he wins. How do we stop him? You testify to the truth. All of it. That you saw me there, yes, but also that you saw Morrison. That you've received threats. That Reeves called you. Make the jury see the bigger picture. They might not believe me. They might think I'm lying to help you. Then we need more evidence, Dominic said. And I think I know where to find it. Where? Morrison. He's the weak link. Reeves trusts him because he's been loyal for years, but loyalty has a price. Everyone breaks eventually. You want to flip Morrison? Zara asked. That's insane. Insane is letting Reeves get away with this, Dominic said. Meet me tomorrow. There's someone I want you to talk to. Who? My lawyer. Best criminal defense attorney in the state. She can explain what we need to make this work. I can't afford a lawyer like that. You're not paying, Dominic said. I am. This isn't charity, Zara. You're a witness in my case. Making sure you have proper legal advice is just smart defense strategy. Zara wanted to argue, but exhaustion and fear won out. Fine. Where and when? 10 a.m. My lawyer's office downtown. I'll send you the address. And Zara, he paused. Be careful. Reeves doesn't make empty threats. The next morning, Zara took a cab to the address Dominic had sent, a gleaming tower in the financial district. The lobby alone probably cost more than her entire neighborhood. The elevator whisked her up to the 30th floor where a receptionist led her to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Dominic was already there, along with a woman who looked like she'd been born in a power suit. She was in her 50s, black, with gray streaks in her natural hair, and eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Mitchell, the woman said, extending her hand. I'm Barbara Henderson. Please, have a seat. For the next hour, Barbara explained the legal situation in terms Zara could understand. The prosecution's case was largely circumstantial. They had Dominic's bid on the building, they had his presence at the fire, and they had motive. But they didn't have direct evidence he'd ordered the arson. What they don't have, Barbara said, is the real story, which is where you come in. Me? Your testimony could go two ways, Barbara explained. You could testify that you saw Mr. Sterling at the fire and he looked guilty. That's what the prosecution wants. Or you could testify that you saw him there, but you also saw Peter Morrison, a known associate of Victor Reeves, that you've been threatened, that there's another explanation for what happened. Won't that look like I'm biased? Like I'm trying to help Dominic? Possibly, Barbara said. Which is why we need corroborating evidence. And that's where Morrison comes in. Dominic leaned forward. Morrison's wife is sick. Cancer. The treatments are experimental and expensive, even with insurance. He's drowning in medical debt. Zara's stomach turned. So you want to bribe him? I want to offer him a way out, Dominic said. A chance to do the right thing and save his wife's life. That's not the same thing as a bribe. It's exactly the same thing, Zara said. You're buying his testimony just like Reeves bought yours. That's not fair. Isn't it? She stood up. You're all the same. Rich people playing games while the rest of us suffer. I should have known better. Ms. Mitchell, Barbara said calmly, please sit down. Zara remained standing. Why should I? Because you need to hear what else we found. Barbara pulled out another folder. This one contained medical records, billing statements, and a letter. Morrison's wife, Catherine, has stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She has maybe 6 months to live. Morrison has been trying to get her into a clinical trial that could extend her life, maybe even save it. But they need $200,000 up front. Money Morrison doesn't have. That's terrible, Zara said. But it doesn't change anything. Actually, it changes everything, Barbara said. Because Victor Reeves knows about Catherine's condition, and he's been promising Morrison that if he stays loyal, Reeves will pay for the treatment. But there's no contract, no guarantee, just promises. Dominic spoke up. I'm not offering Morrison a bribe. I'm offering him a guarantee. A legal contract that ensures Catherine gets into that trial and all her medical expenses are covered for life, whether Morrison testifies or not. He doesn't have to say anything that isn't true. He just has to tell the truth about who really ordered that fire. Zara sat down slowly. When? When what? When did you become a decent person? Dominic's laugh was bitter. I'm not decent, I'm desperate. But maybe that amounts to the same thing. Barbara closed the folder. We're meeting Morrison tonight. Neutral location, no pressure. If he doesn't want to talk, he can walk away. But I think he will talk. I think he's been waiting for someone to give him permission to tell the truth. Zara looked between them. And if this works, if Morrison testifies, then we have a chance, Barbara said. A real chance at justice. Zara thought about all the families from her building, about Mrs. Chen who'd lost everything at 72 years old, about the young couple in 416 who'd just had a baby, about everyone who'd been hurt by this fire, no matter who said it. All right, she said, I'm in. But I have one condition. Name it, Dominic said. When this is over, regardless of how it turns out, you use your money to actually help the families from that building. Real help, not just a token gesture. Set up a fund, provide housing assistance, job training, whatever they need to rebuild. You do that, and I'll believe you've actually changed. Done, Dominic said without hesitation. Barbara, draw up the paperwork. I want it ironclad. Barbara nodded. I'll have it ready by tomorrow. They met Morrison that night in a diner on the edge of the city, the kind of place where nobody asked questions, and the coffee was strong. He came alone, looking 10 years older than the photo Dominic had shown Zara. Exhaustion sat on his shoulders like a weight. Thank you for coming, Barbara said as they all slid into a booth. Morrison looked at Dominic with barely concealed hatred. I shouldn't be here. If Reeves finds out, so why did you come? Dominic asked quietly. Morrison's hands shook as he wrapped them around his coffee mug. Because I'm tired. Tired of lying. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching my wife die while I play bodyguard for a sociopath. Tell us what happened, Barbara said gently. Morrison took a shaky breath. Reeves wanted that building. Had his eye on it for months. But Sterling Properties put in a competing bid, and the owner was leaning toward taking it. Reeves didn't like that. So what did he do? He brought me into his office one day and said the building needed to go away. I knew what he meant. I've worked for him long enough to know how he operates. When he says something needs to go away, he doesn't mean file it in storage. You set the fire? Zara asked, her voice hard. Morrison shook his head. I hired someone to do it. Professional arsonist, makes it look like bad wiring. Reeves gave me $50,000 in cash and told me to handle it. Said nobody would get hurt because we'd call in an anonymous tip before the fire got too bad. Make sure everyone got out. And did you? Call in the tip? Morrison looked at his hands. I called it in. But the fire spread faster than we thought. By the time the trucks got there, half the building was gone. He finally looked at Zara. I'm sorry. Your sorry doesn't give me back my grandmother's quilt, Zara said, her voice shaking with rage. It doesn't bring back 3 years of my life. It doesn't undo what you did. I know, Morrison whispered. I know it doesn't. So why tell us now? Dominic asked. Why not just keep quiet? Let me take the fall. Because Reeves isn't going to pay for Catherine's treatment, Morrison said. I heard him on the phone yesterday with his accountant, laughing about how gullible I am. Said once you're convicted, he'll cut me loose. No treatment, no money, nothing. Just promises that were never real. So this is all self-interest, Zara said coldly. Morrison met her eyes. Yes. And no. I did a terrible thing. I destroyed people's lives for money. Maybe this doesn't make it right, but at least it's true. At least someone will pay for what happened. Barbara pulled out the contract. If you testify, truthfully and completely about Victor Reeves's role in the arson, Mr. Sterling will ensure your wife receives the medical treatment she needs. All costs covered, no strings attached. This is a binding legal document. Even if Mr. Sterling is convicted, the obligation stands. Morrison read through it with shaking hands. Why? He asked Dominic. Why would you do this? Because 63 families deserve justice, Dominic said. And because you're the only person who can give it to them. Morrison signed. The trial started on a gray Monday morning in late January. The courthouse steps were packed with news cameras, protesters holding signs demanding justice, and curious onlookers hoping to see the rich defendant brought low. Zara arrived with Barbara, who'd insisted on escorting her. The media circus had gotten intense in the days before trial, with her name leaked to the press as the star witness. She'd already received dozens of messages, some supportive, many hostile. Rich people had their defenders even when the evidence was damning. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than she'd expected from television, more intimate. The jury box sat empty, waiting to be filled. The prosecution team sat at their table, led by Marcus Webb, the assistant district attorney who'd called her weeks ago. They looked confident, prepared. Dominic sat at the defense table with Barbara and two other lawyers. He wore a navy suit and a carefully neutral expression. But when Zara entered, his eyes found hers. He gave her a small nod. She didn't nod back. The jury was selected. 12 people who'd sworn they could be impartial despite the media coverage. 8 women, 4 men, mix of ages and races. They looked tired already. Marcus Webb gave the opening statement for the prosecution. He painted Dominic as a ruthless developer who'd seen an opportunity and taken it. Consequences be damned. He described the fire in devastating detail, showed photos of the destroyed building, read testimony from displaced families. By the end, 2 jurors were wiping their eyes. Barbara Henderson stood for the defense. She was calm, measured, devastating in her precision. She didn't deny Dominic's presence at the fire. She didn't deny he'd wanted that building. Instead, she told them a story about a bigger fish, a more dangerous predator, and a scapegoat who'd been perfectly positioned to take the fall. The evidence will show, she said, that Dominic Sterling is guilty of many things. Ambition, ruthlessness in business, a callous disregard for the human cost of development. But he did not set that fire. Someone else did. Someone with more to gain and less to lose. And by the end of this trial, you'll know exactly who that someone is. The first 3 days were prosecution witnesses, fire investigators who explained how the fire started, residents who described losing everything, financial experts who showed Dominic's bid for the building and his history of aggressive development tactics. Zara sat in the witness waiting room, not allowed to hear the testimony until it was her turn. On the 4th day, Marcus Webb called her name. Ms. Zara Mitchell, please take the stand. Her legs felt weak as she walked to the witness box. She put her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Marcus Webb smiled at her, the practiced smile of a prosecutor who thought he'd already won. Ms. Mitchell, can you please tell the jury what you saw on the morning of November 14th? Zara took a breath and began to speak. But as she spoke, telling them about seeing the fire, about spotting Dominic across the police tape, about his strange, satisfied smile, something caught her eye. 2 people had entered the courtroom and taken seats in the back row, a man and a woman, both in their late 20s or early 30s. They looked remarkably similar, with the same sharp features, the same intense eyes. They were staring at Dominic with expressions Zara couldn't quite read. Fury, recognition, fear. Dominic had gone completely rigid in his seat. His face had lost all color. He was staring at the newcomers like he'd seen ghosts. Ms. Mitchell? Marcus Webb prompted. Are you all right? Zara tore her gaze back to the prosecutor. Yes, sorry. Could you repeat the question? But her eyes kept drifting back to the 2 strangers. Who were they? And why did Dominic look like his entire world had just collapsed? Marcus Webb continued his questioning, but Zara's answers were distracted. Finally, he seemed to notice something was wrong. The judge called a recess. As the courtroom emptied for a break, the 2 strangers stood and walked straight to the defense table. Zara, still on the witness stand, watched as they approached Dominic. The woman spoke first, her voice carrying in the suddenly quiet room. Hello, Dominic. You don't know us, but we know you. We're your brother and sister, and we have a lot to talk about. The courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but even he looked confused. Dominic Sterling, the man who'd faced down prosecutors and maintained his composure through days of damning testimony, looked like he might collapse. Your brother and sister? Barbara Henderson was the first to recover, stepping between Dominic and the twins. "I'm Mr. Sterling's attorney. Who exactly are you, and what evidence do you have to support this claim?" The woman pulled an envelope from her bag. "DNA test results, birth certificates, hospital records from 29 years ago when our mother gave birth to triplets in Portland, Oregon. One boy kept by the wealthy family who could afford him. 2 babies given up because raising 3 was impossible for a single mother dying of cancer." The courtroom went silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. The man stepped forward. "My name is Marcus Cole. This is my sister, Elena Cole. And yes, we're Dominic Sterling's biological siblings, born on the same day, in the same hospital to the same mother. The only difference is he got the mansion and the trust fund, and we got foster homes and food stamps." Judge Harrison, a gray-haired man with decades on the bench, cleared his throat. "This is highly irregular. Mr. Webb, Ms. Henderson, approach the bench." Zara watched from the witness stand as both legal teams huddled with the judge. Dominic still hadn't moved. He sat frozen, staring at the 2 people who claimed to share his DNA. Elena caught Zara's eye and smiled. It wasn't friendly. After a tense 5-minute discussion, the judge addressed the courtroom. "We'll take a 1-hour recess while I determine if this information is admissible. Mr. Cole, Ms. Cole, you'll need to speak with both legal teams. Ms. Mitchell, you're excused for now, but don't leave the building." The courtroom emptied in a rush of excited conversation. Zara made her way to the witness room, but Barbara intercepted her. "We need to talk," Barbara said, steering her into an empty conference room. Dominic was already there, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. "Did you know about them?" Zara asked. "I knew I was adopted," Dominic said, his voice hollow. "My parents told me when I was 16. They said my birth mother couldn't care for me, that I was lucky to have been chosen. They never mentioned siblings, never mentioned there were 2 others." "Elena and Marcus want to testify," Barbara said. "Against you. They claim you've known about them for years and deliberately kept them in poverty while you lived in luxury." "That's not true," Dominic said, suddenly angry. "I didn't know. How could I know?" Barbara held up the envelope Elena had given her. "According to these documents, your father knew. He was contacted by the adoption agency when the twins turned 18 and requested information about their biological family. Your father paid them $50,000 to go away and never contact you." The blood drained from Dominic's face again. "My father did what?" Barbara read from a letter. "It's right here, dated 7 years ago. The twins wanted to meet you. Your father's lawyer sent them money and a legal document requiring them to never attempt contact. They took the money because they were broke and desperate. But they never forgot." "And why show up now?" Zara asked. "At the trial?" Elena and Marcus entered the room without knocking. "Because now the world is watching," Elena said. "Now when we tell our story, people will actually listen. We've tried for years to get someone to pay attention to how the Sterling family threw us away like garbage. Nobody cared. But a billionaire on trial for arson? That's news." Dominic stood slowly. "I didn't know about you." Elena laughed. "But it was bitter." "Of course you didn't. You were too busy playing prince in your castle to wonder if you had family out there struggling." Marcus stepped forward, his face hard. "Our mother died when we were 8. Cancer. Same as what killed your mother later. Except your mother got the best treatment money could buy and lived until you were 15. Our mother died in a county hospital because she couldn't afford real care." Dominic flinched. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't feed foster kids," Marcus said. "Sorry doesn't keep you warm when you're sleeping in your car at 17. Sorry doesn't stop your sister from being assaulted in her 3rd foster home because nobody gave a damn about 2 orphan mixed-race kids." Elena's eyes were wet, but her voice was steel. "We came here to tell the jury who you really are. A man who has everything while his own blood has nothing. A man whose family paid us to stay invisible. A man who burns down buildings full of poor people because he can." "I didn't burn that building," Dominic said. "And I didn't know about you. But if I had known, I would have helped." "Would you?" Elena challenged. "Or would you have done exactly what your father did? Paid us off and pretended we don't exist? The silence that followed was broken by Barbara. Ms. Cole. Mr. Cole. I understand your anger. But if you testify against Dominic, you're helping Victor Reeves get away with arson. You're helping a truly dangerous man destroy the only person who's trying to stop him. We don't care about Victor Reeves, Marcus said. We care about justice. Real justice, not rich people justice. Zara found herself speaking up. I get it, I really do. I lost everything in that fire. My grandmother's quilt, my mother's photos, 3 years of my life. I wanted someone to pay. I wanted Dominic to be the villain because that made sense. Rich man destroys poor people's homes. Simple, easy, satisfying. But it's not true. She looked at Elena and Marcus. Dominic might be guilty of a lot of things. Ignoring poverty, playing ruthless business games, being born into privilege he didn't earn. But he didn't set that fire. Victor Reeves did. And if you testify against Dominic, you're not hurting a bad rich man. You're hurting 63 families who need the real arsonist to face consequences. Elena's expression softened slightly. Why should we believe you? Because I'm one of those families, Zara said. And because I've spent weeks wanting to destroy Dominic too. But destroying the wrong person doesn't make anything better. Marcus looked at his sister. They had a whole conversation in glances, the kind only siblings can have. Finally, Elena spoke. We want to meet with Morrison, the man who actually set the fire. We want to hear his story directly. That can be arranged, Barbara said. But I need to know. Are you going to testify against Dominic or not? Not yet, Elena said. First we hear Morrison, then we decide. The meeting with Morrison happened that evening in Barbara's office. Catherine Morrison was there too, in a wheelchair, oxygen tubes in her nose, but her eyes sharp and aware. These are the twins who say they're Dominic's siblings, Barbara explained to Morrison. They want to understand what really happened. Morrison looked at Elena and Marcus with something like recognition. You were in foster care? Marcus nodded. How did you know? Because I was too, Morrison said. Different state, different time, but I remember that look. That anger at the world for dealing you a bad hand. Reeves recruited me because of it. Said I understood how to do what needed to be done because I'd already survived worse than most people could imagine. He used you, Elena said, just like everyone uses people like us. Morrison nodded slowly. He promised me the money for Catherine's treatment, promised me we'd finally be safe. I didn't ask too many questions about the fire. I told myself nobody would get hurt, that it was just property, just a building. But people did get hurt. Zara lost everything. So did dozens of other families, and I did that. I can't undo it. I can't give back what I took, but I can tell the truth about who ordered it. Catherine spoke up, her voice weak but determined. We talked about taking the money and running, going to Mexico, disappearing. But that's not justice. That's just more running. We've been running our whole lives. Elena looked at the dying woman with something like respect. You're testifying, even though it might not save you. Even though Reeves will come after you. Catherine smiled. Honey, I'm already dying. What's he going to do? Kill me faster? At least this way I die telling the truth. Marcus wiped his eyes. This is what real courage looks like. Not rich people playing games. Not legal maneuvers. Just a sick woman doing the right thing because it's right. Dominic, who'd been silent, spoke quietly. I can't change what my father did to you. I can't give you back your childhood or your mother or the life you should have had. But I can give you what's mine. Elena frowned. What does that mean? It means I'm changing my will, Dominic said. If I'm convicted, if I go to prison, Sterling Properties goes to both of you. Equal shares. You'll have the money, the power, everything I have. If you're not convicted, then I still split it with you, Dominic said. You're my family. You should have been part of my life from the beginning. This doesn't fix the past, but maybe it starts to address the future. Marcus stared at him. You're serious. Completely, Dominic said. Barbara's already drafting the paperwork. Elena's expression was complicated. Anger, hope, suspicion, all mixed together. "We don't want your guilt money." "It's not guilt money," Dominic said. "It's blood money. Literally. You're my blood. The money should have been yours all along." The trial resumed 2 days later. In that time, everything had shifted. Elena and Marcus had agreed not to testify against Dominic. Instead, they'd spend the days learning about the fire, talking to displaced families, understanding the real scope of what had been done. Zara had watched them transform from angry strangers seeking revenge to something more complicated. People trying to figure out where they fit in a story that kept changing. Marcus Webb called his final witnesses: fire investigators, financial experts, one more displaced family member who cried describing their losses. Then he rested his case. "The evidence speaks for itself," Webb said in his closing. "Dominic Sterling wanted that building. The building burned. He was seen at the scene. The conclusion is inescapable." Barbara stood for the defense. "Our first witness is Peter Morrison." The courtroom buzzed as Morrison was sworn in. He looked smaller on the witness stand, diminished by guilt and fear. Barbara walked him through the timeline carefully, how Reeves had approached him, how the plan had developed, how Morrison had hired the arsonist, how the anonymous tip had come too late. "And Mr. Sterling's role in this?" Barbara asked. "He had none," Morrison said. "I never spoke to him, never contacted him, never received instructions from him. Reeves wanted Sterling to take the fall. That was always the plan." Marcus Webb's cross-examination was brutal. "Isn't it convenient that you're blaming a man who's not on trial? You expect us to believe Victor Reeves, a respected businessman, ordered this arson?" "Reeves is a lot of things," Morrison said. "Respected isn't one of them." "Do you have proof? Hard evidence linking Reeves to this crime?" Morrison hesitated. "I have phone records showing calls from burner phones Reeves uses. I have bank transfers from shell companies he controls. I have my testimony, and he has no reason to believe me." But Webb had done his job. He'd planted doubt. Morrison was a confessed arsonist trying to shift blame. Why should anyone trust him? Barbara's next witness was Zara. "Ms. Mitchell, you've heard Mr. Morrison's testimony. Does it change your account of what you saw that day?" "Yes," Zara said. "When I first saw Dominic at the fire, I thought his satisfied look meant he was guilty. Now I understand he was realizing he'd been set up. The satisfaction wasn't about the fire. It was almost," she searched for words, admiration for how perfectly he'd been framed. "And you saw Peter Morrison at the scene?" "I did," Zara confirmed, standing next to Dominic. "At the time I didn't know who he was, but I remember him clearly." Marcus Webb's cross-examination tried to shake her. "Ms. Mitchell, you've spent considerable time with Mr. Sterling since the fire. You've met with him privately multiple times. Isn't it possible your testimony has been influenced by his wealth and charm?" "No," Zara said firmly. "My testimony has been influenced by the truth. I wanted Dominic to be guilty. It would have been easier, cleaner. Rich man burns down poor people's homes. That's a story that makes sense. But it's not what happened." "Don't you have feelings for Mr. Sterling?" Webb pressed. "Feelings that might cloud your judgment?" Zara looked directly at Dominic. "I have complicated feelings about a complicated man. But that doesn't change what I saw. That doesn't change that Victor Reeves is the one who should be on trial." The judge sustained Barbara's objection, but the damage was done. The jury had seen Zara look at Dominic with something that might be affection. The trial continued for another week. Expert witnesses debated phone records and financial transfers. Character witnesses described Dominic as ruthless, but not criminal. The prosecution brought rebuttal witnesses who painted him as capable of anything. Through it all, Elena and Marcus sat in the gallery every day, watching, learning, judging. On the final day of testimony, Barbara called her last witness, Elena Cole. The courtroom stirred with interest. Everyone knew who she was by now. The secret sister. The living reminder of Dominic's complicated privilege. "Ms. Cole," Barbara began, "you came to this trial intending to testify against my client. Why did you change your mind?" Elena looked at the jury. "Because I realized I was angry at the wrong person. Dominic Sterling didn't choose to be adopted by a wealthy family any more than I chose foster care. He didn't choose to have opportunities I never had. That's not his fault. It's just luck, good and bad. But what he can choose is what he does with his privilege now. And what is he doing? He's trying to make it right, Elena said. Not perfectly, not in ways that undo the past, but he's trying. He's given Marcus and me access to resources we never had. He's setting up funds for the families displaced by the fire. He's using his money to actually help instead of just hoarding it. Ms. Cole, Marcus Webb objected. Are you testifying that your brother paid you off? Barbara objected right back. Mr. Sterling has made no payments contingent on testimony. The financial arrangements were made regardless of Ms. Cole's decision to testify. The judge allowed the question to stand, and Elena answered. He didn't pay us off. He acknowledged us. He treated us like family. That's not something you can buy. Webb tried to recover on cross-examination. So your testimony is influenced by financial considerations. My testimony is influenced by truth, Elena said. And the truth is that Dominic Sterling has done a lot of questionable things in his business life, but burning that building isn't one of them. I wanted it to be. I wanted him to be the villain. But wanting something doesn't make it true. Closing arguments happened on a Friday. Marcus Webb went first, making an impassioned case about accountability for the wealthy. When the rich commit crimes, they hide behind lawyers and money and complicated stories that distract from simple facts. Dominic Sterling wanted that building. The building burned. He should pay. Barbara Henderson closed for the defense. This case isn't about whether Dominic Sterling is a good person. It's about whether he committed this specific crime. And the evidence shows he didn't. Peter Morrison committed the arson on orders from Victor Reeves. That's the truth. The jury can't convict the wrong man just because the right one isn't here. The jury got the case at 3 p.m. They deliberated for 2 days. Zara spent those days unable to eat, unable to sleep, replaying every moment of her testimony. Had she done enough? Had she told the truth clearly? Would they believe her? Dominic spent the time with Elena and Marcus, getting to know the siblings he'd never known existed. They showed him photos of their childhood, told him stories about their mother, filled in gaps in a family history he'd thought was complete. I wish I'd known, he said over dinner the night before the verdict. I wish I could have helped. You know now, Marcus said. That's what matters. On Monday morning, the jury sent word they'd reached a verdict. The courtroom packed with spectators, reporters, and the displaced families who'd waited months for this moment. Zara sat in the front row, flanked by Deshawn and Keisha. Dominic sat at the defense table, Barbara on one side, Elena and Marcus directly behind him. The jury filed in. Zara tried to read their faces but couldn't. The forewoman, a middle-aged black woman who reminded Zara of her grandmother, stood when asked if they'd reached a verdict. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit arson, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Some people cheered. Others shouted in protest. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Order. We will have order. On the charge of arson in the first degree, how do you find the defendant? Not guilty. Dominic's shoulders sagged with relief. Barbara put a hand on his arm. Elena was crying. But the judge wasn't finished. He looked at the prosecution table where Marcus Webb sat, his face tight with frustration. Mr. Webb, I'm deeply troubled by what this trial has revealed. Evidence of a conspiracy by Victor Reeves has been presented in my courtroom. What is your office doing about it? Your Honor, Webb said, standing. We're opening an investigation into Mr. Reeves's involvement. Then I suggest you move quickly, the judge said. Because if half of what was testified here is true, a very dangerous man is walking free while we put the wrong person on trial. The judge dismissed the jury with thanks and declared the proceedings closed. Dominic stood and immediately turned to find Zara. She was already moving toward him. They met in the aisle, and without thinking, without caring who was watching, they hugged. Thank you, Dominic whispered. Thank you for believing me when you had every reason not to. I didn't do it for you, Zara said, pulling back. I did it for everyone who lost their homes. For justice. I know, Dominic said, but thank you anyway. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Dominic gave a brief statement about being grateful for the jury's decision and committed to helping rebuild the lives disrupted by the fire. Elena and Marcus stood beside him, and when asked about their relationship, Dominic put his arms around them. These are my sister and brother, family I should have known about years ago. We have a lot of catching up to do. That night, there was a gathering at Dominic's penthouse. Not a party exactly, more a collective exhale of relief. Morrison was there with Catherine, who'd been admitted to the clinical trial, and was already responding to treatment. Elena and Marcus were there, still getting used to the idea of a brother with a penthouse. Zara came with Deshawn, who couldn't stop staring at the view. This is literally insane, Deshawn whispered. Your life is a movie. More like a nightmare, Zara whispered back. But maybe it's ending okay. Dominic found her on the balcony later, looking out at the city. How are you holding up? Zara shrugged. I'm homeless, broke, and I just helped to quit a billionaire. Living the dream. He smiled. About that. I meant what I said about helping the families from the fire. I've set up a fund. $5 million. Housing assistance, job training, education costs, whatever people need. $5 million, Zara repeated. That's a start, but it doesn't replace what we lost. I know, Dominic said quietly. Nothing can replace that. But it's something. It's more than something. Zara turned to face him. It's you actually using your privilege for good instead of just hoarding it. That's growth. He laughed. High praise from you. I've learned my compliments are rare, so treasure them. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the city glittering below them. Zara, Dominic said, what happens now? With us? She'd been avoiding thinking about that question. What happens when the crisis is over and real life resumes? When they're not united against a common enemy, but just two people from completely different worlds? I don't know, she admitted. We're not exactly a natural fit. Why not? Because you live in a penthouse, and I'm sleeping on an air mattress. Because you wear suits that cost more than my car, and I wear scrubs with coffee stains. Because we're from different planets. Zara took a breath. And because every time I look at you, I remember that your business destroyed neighborhoods like mine long before this fire. That's fair, Dominic said. And true. I can't undo my past. But I can change my future. I can be better. Can you? Zara challenged. Or will you go back to being the ruthless developer once the spotlight fades? He met her eyes. I guess you'll have to stick around to find out. Is that an invitation? It's a hope, he said. Because you make me want to be the person you see in me. The person who does the right thing because it's right. Not because it's profitable or strategic. You already are that person, Zara said. You just forgot for a while. Dominic stepped closer. Zara Mitchell, would you consider having dinner with me? Just dinner. No legal crisis, no fire, no trial. Just two people getting to know each other. She smiled. Are you asking me on a date? I'm asking for a chance, he said. A real one. Zara thought about her grandmother, who used to say that people deserve as many chances as they're willing to earn. Dominic had earned this one. One date, she said. But I'm picking the restaurant. Somewhere with normal prices and food that doesn't require a tutorial to eat. Deal. 6 months later, Zara stood in front of her new apartment building. Not the luxury condo Dominic had offered to buy for her, but a modest 2-bedroom in a safe neighborhood with reasonable rent subsidized by the Sterling Fire Relief Fund. She had her own furniture now, nothing fancy but all hers. New photos on the walls, not replacements for what she'd lost, but new memories. Her nursing school textbooks on the shelf, replaced through educational grants from the fund. She'd finished her semester and passed with honors. The building on Riverside Avenue had been demolished. In its place, Sterling Properties was constructing affordable housing units, with priority given to the displaced families. It wasn't enough to fix everything, but it was something real. Victor Reeves had been arrested 3 weeks after Dominic's acquittal. Morrison's testimony, combined with financial records and phone logs, had finally given prosecutors enough evidence. The trial was scheduled for next year. Reeves's empire was crumbling. Properties seized, business partners fleeing. Justice was slow, but it was coming. Zara's phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. "Dinner tonight? I'm making pasta." "You're making pasta." Another text. "Fine. I'm having pasta delivered. But I'll set the table very impressively." She smiled. "That sounds more realistic. See you at 7. Their relationship had been cautious, neither rushing nor retreating. 6 months of dinners and long conversations and learning each other's worlds. He'd come to her nursing school graduation, sitting in the audience with Elena and Marcus, and cheering loud enough to embarrass her. She'd gone to Sterling Properties board meetings, offering perspective on community impact that his executives never considered. Elena had become the family's community outreach director, using her foster care experience to shape corporate charity work. Marcus had taken over affordable housing development, ensuring Sterling Properties built places people could actually afford to live. The company was less profitable than before, but more purposeful. Not every story had a happy ending. Mrs. Chen from apartment 414 had died 2 months after the fire, her heart giving out from the stress. The young couple from 416 had divorced, the trauma too much for their fragile relationship to survive. Some displaced families never recovered, ending up in worse situations than before. The fire's ripples kept spreading, but some good had come from the ashes. Morrison was free after cooperating fully with prosecutors, spending his time caring for Catherine and trying to make amends. The families who'd testified received priority in the new housing. The Sterling Fire Relief Fund had helped dozens of people get back on their feet, and Zara had found something she didn't know she was looking for. Not just justice, not just restitution, but possibility. The possibility that people could change, that privilege could be wielded for good, that different worlds could find common ground. She arrived at Dominic's penthouse at 7. He'd set the table with actual candles and flowers, which was both sweet and slightly ridiculous. "You didn't have to do all this," she said. "I wanted to," he replied. "Besides, Elena said I need to work on my romantic gestures." "Your sister is giving you dating advice?" "Both of them are," Dominic admitted. "Marcus says I'm emotionally stunted. He's not wrong." Over pasta and wine, they talked about their days. Zara described a difficult patient at the hospital where she now worked part-time. Dominic explained a complicated negotiation with the city about zoning for the new affordable units. It was normal, comfortable, real. After dinner, Dominic pulled out a folder. "What's this?" Zara asked. "Paperwork," he said. "I'm making you a formal consultant for Sterling Properties. Paid position, full benefits, flexible hours that work with your nursing schedule. Your job is to keep us honest, to review every project and tell us when we're putting profit over people." "Dominic, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," he said. "You already do the work anyway, showing up at meetings, calling me out when I make bad decisions. You might as well get paid for it." She looked at the contract. The salary was generous but not absurd. The terms gave her real authority to influence company decisions. It felt less like charity and more like recognition. "Okay," she said. "But I'm going to make your life difficult. I'm counting on it." He smiled. "That's why I want you there." Later, standing on the balcony again, looking at the same view but seeing it differently now, Zara felt Dominic's arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That 6 months ago I wanted to destroy you," she said. "And now? Now I think maybe we destroyed the versions of ourselves that needed to go, and built something better from what was left." He turned her to face him. "I love you, Zara Mitchell." He said it simply, like it was the most obvious truth in the world. She looked at this man who'd been her enemy, her ally, her mystery, her certainty. This man who'd learned to be better, who'd chosen change when it would have been easier to stay the same. "I love you too," she said, "even though you're still terrible at cooking." "I can learn," he said. "You learned justice," Zara said. "Cooking's nothing compared to that." They kissed on the balcony, high above a city that had witnessed their war and their peace. Below them, 63 families were rebuilding their lives. Morrison was fighting for his wife's survival. Elena and Marcus were discovering what family meant. Reeves was facing consequences finally. Nothing was perfect. The world still had more poor than rich, more injustice than justice, more fires than anyone knew how to put out. But here, in this moment, two people from different worlds had found each other in the ashes, had chosen to build something new together, and that was its own kind of miracle. 3 years later, Zara and Dominic stood in front of the completed Riverside Avenue apartments. 63 families had been invited to the opening ceremony, offered first choice of units at permanently affordable rents. Mrs. Chen's daughter cut the ribbon, tears streaming down her face. "This is for Mama," she said. She would have loved this. The building was beautiful, modern but warm, with community spaces and a garden and touches suggested by the future residents. It wasn't the old building. Nothing could be that. But it was a new home, built from tragedy and choice, and the slow, patient work of making things right. Elena spoke at the ceremony. 3 years ago, my brother and I came to a courthouse full of anger. We wanted someone to pay for all the unfairness in the world. We thought Dominic was that someone. But we learned that revenge isn't justice. That blame isn't the same as accountability. That the person you think is your enemy might turn out to be your family. Marcus added his thoughts. The fire took so much. Homes, belongings, security, peace. Some of what was lost can never be replaced. But from those ashes, we built something I never thought possible. A company that cares more about people than profit. A family that includes everyone instead of excluding most. A future that's not about what we lost, but what we choose to create. Then Dominic spoke. Zara beside him, her hand in his. "I can't change my past. I can't give back what the fire took. I can't undo the years my siblings spent in foster care while I lived in luxury. But I can choose what kind of person I am today, what kind of business I run, what kind of family I build." He looked at Zara. "I almost lost everything to a crime I didn't commit, but in the process, I found something I didn't know I needed. The truth about who I am, who I could be, and who I want to become. This building is just brick and mortar, but it represents a choice. The choice to use privilege for purpose, to turn tragedy into transformation, to believe that people can change and that change can matter." Zara stepped forward. 3 years ago, I lost my home. But I found my voice. I learned that justice isn't simple, that good people can make bad choices and bad situations can create good outcomes. I learned that love isn't about two people being the same. It's about two people choosing to build something together even when it's hard. She looked at the families gathered. "You all lost so much in that fire. But you didn't lose your dignity, your strength, your community. You rebuilt your lives with courage most people can't imagine. This building is for you, but it's also because of you, because you refused to give up, because you demanded justice, because you showed what resilience really means." The ceremony ended with a community dinner in the garden. Children played while adults shared stories. Morrison and Catherine were there, her cancer in remission, their future uncertain but hopeful. Elena and Marcus mingled with residents, collecting feedback, planning improvements, treating people like partners instead of charity cases. And Zara and Dominic watched it all, knowing this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. There would be more challenges, more fires, both literal and metaphorical. More injustice to fight, more systems to change, more hard conversations about privilege and power. But they'd face it together. Two people from different worlds who'd learned that worlds can change when people choose to build bridges instead of walls. When someone chooses justice over revenge. When privilege becomes purpose. When love means not just feeling, but doing. The sun set on Riverside Avenue, casting long shadows across the new building. Somewhere in the city, Victor Reeves sat in a jail cell, finally facing consequences for his crimes. Somewhere else, families were moving into homes they'd thought they'd never have. And on that balcony they'd stood on so many times, Zara and Dominic looked out at a city still full of problems, but also full of possibilities. "Did we do enough?" Dominic asked. "No," Zara said honestly, "but we did something. And we'll keep doing something until it is enough." He smiled. "That's why I love you. Because you never let me settle. That's why I love you, she replied. Because you stopped settling. They went inside together, to a life they'd built from fire and fury, and the stubborn belief that people could be better if they chose to be. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real.